Welcome to Daily Papers, the podcast where we break down the latest academic research into bite-sized, easy-to-digest pieces.
Today, we're diving into the world of journalism, artificial intelligence, and a word we hear a lot these days, disinformation. We're looking at a paper called Journalists' Perceptions of Artificial Intelligence and Disinformation Risks.
Right, so AI is everywhere. We use it to get directions, to pick what movie to watch, and increasingly it's being used in newsrooms to help write articles, summarize reports, and sift through data. But is that a good thing? What do the people on the front lines, the journalists themselves, actually think about it?
That's exactly what a group of researchers from the University of the Basque Country wanted to find out. They surveyed over 500 journalists to get their take on how AI is going to affect their work, especially when it comes to the spread of false information.
And the headline result is pretty stark, isn't it?
It really is. A huge majority, we're talking almost 90% of the journalists surveyed, believe that AI will considerably or significantly increase the risks of disinformation. So they are very worried.
Let's quickly define that term, disinformation. It's not just information that's wrong, it's false information that is spread deliberately with the intent to deceive people. Think of things like deepfakes, those fake videos or audio clips that look and sound incredibly real.
Exactly, and that's the great paradox of AI in journalism. On one hand, you can build AI tools to help fact-checkers spot fake news and debunk it faster than ever before. But on the other hand, bad actors can use that very same technology to create and spread convincing fake news on a massive scale. It's a classic double-edged sword.
So when these journalists say they're worried, what are their biggest fears? What keeps them up at night?
The paper breaks it down really clearly. The number one risk they identified is the sheer difficulty in telling what's real anymore. With AI, you can generate an article, an image, or a video that is almost indistinguishable from the real thing. The fear is that journalists and the public will struggle to spot these fakes.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. What was the second biggest concern?
The second one is about the AI itself being wrong. We know that AI models can sometimes hallucinate, which is a gentle way of saying they just make things up. They can present inaccurate data or invent sources, so a journalist might use an AI for research and accidentally end up with erroneous information, which then gets published as fact.
And what's really interesting is that the journalists see those two risks as completely interconnected.
For sure, if you've got AI systems creating incredibly realistic fake content, and at the same time the AI tools you're using for research might be feeding you bad information, it creates a massive storm for a breakdown in trust. It becomes a massive threat to the reliability of information, which is the cornerstone of journalism.
Now, the study found that this feeling of concern was pretty widespread, but not everyone felt it to the same degree. There were some interesting differences.
Yes, and this is where it gets really fascinating. The first factor was experience. The journalists who had been in the profession the longest, we're talking more than 20 years, were the most worried.
So the veterans are more skeptical. Maybe they're more protective of the old school standards of verification and fact-checking and see AI as a threat to that.
That could be it. In contrast, younger journalists and those working for newer digital-only media outlets were still concerned but slightly less pessimistic than their older counterparts at traditional newspapers or TV stations.
But the most surprising finding for me was about who uses AI.
Right? You would think the people using AI every day would be the most aware of its dangers, but the study found the opposite. Journalists who don't use AI in their daily work were the most likely to see it as a major threat.
Whereas the journalists who use AI tools intensively actually had a more moderate, less fearful view. It suggests that familiarity with the technology gives you a more nuanced perspective.
Exactly. It's like the unknown is always scarier. Once you start using these tools, you see their flaws and limitations up close. You learn where they're useful and where you absolutely cannot trust them. It's less of a scary, mysterious black box and more of a flawed but potentially useful assistant.
So, to sum it up, we have this broad consensus among journalists that AI poses a real risk to the information ecosystem. They worry it could become, as the paper puts it, a weapon of mass disinformation.
A weapon that could erode trust in journalism, manipulate public opinion, and even weaken democracy. These are big existential concerns.
But within that consensus, there are these pockets of what I guess we could call cautious realism among younger journalists, those in digital media, and especially among those who have rolled up their sleeves and actually started using the technology.
And that points directly to the paper's conclusion. The way forward isn't to ban or ignore AI, but to get smarter about it. The authors argue that what's needed is to promote AI literacy among media professionals.
So training, journalists not just on how to use the tools, but how to think critically about their output, to understand the potential for bias, for inaccuracy, and for misuse.
Precisely, the goal is to foster a critical but not reactive adoption of this technology. It's about being informed and prepared, not just being afraid of what's coming. Because whether we like it or not, it's already here.
A really important look at how a profession is grappling with a technology that is changing everything. That's all we have time for today on Daily Papers.
If you want to read it for yourself, the paper is Journalists' Perceptions of Artificial Intelligence and Disinformation Risks, published in the journal Journalism and Media. Thanks for listening.